Welcome to Relyence training on getting started with Relyence RCM. We'll focus on the RCM process for a single failure mode, navigating and entering data in the decision diagram, and entering data on the RCM worksheet. We assume that you have viewed our previous overview tutorial on getting started with Relyence RCM prior to viewing this video. To start, we are signed into Relyence and viewing the Welcome dialog. If you do not have this open, click the Help drop-down on the top right of your screen and click Welcome to Relyence. Here on the Welcome dialog, make sure that RCM is selected using the product selectors on the left. We will be using our drone example in this tutorial, so we click Open Example Analysis. If you have already opened and modified the drone example analysis, you can easily remove all of your changes and return to the example analysis in its as-supplied state by clicking Revert Example in the sidebar, which is highlighted in the message that Relyence is now showing. This is not necessary in this case, so I'll click Got It to clear the message. We are now going to add data to our RCM analysis. In our drone example, we have performed RCM analysis for several items of our analysis tree, but not the motherboard. Now we have made the decision to perform an RCM analysis on the motherboard. To enable RCM analysis for the motherboard subsystem, I click to select it here in the Analysis Tree pane. And next, click Properties to view the properties for the motherboard. Next, click the RCM button in the Properties pane toolbar. The RCM Selector dialog appears. Observe that the checkbox next to the motherboard is cleared, indicating that RCM analysis has not yet been required for this subsystem. To enable RCM analysis for the motherboard, I simply click the check mark. I click Save to save this change, then Close here to close the RCM Selector dialog, and finally, I'll use the Go Back button in the Analysis Tree toolbar to return to the RCM tabs. I can start the RCM analysis for the motherboard subsystem here on the DFMEA Decision Diagram tab. Here in the Properties pane, I'll click the Failure Mode drop-down list to see the list of failure modes identified in the drone example FMEA for the motherboard. For this example, we will step through the RCM process for just one of the three failure modes, Flight Controller Short. So I'll click to select it. And in my decision diagram, I'd like to see the possible outcomes. So I verify my Show setting. Next, we can see what information we have about this failure mode from our already completed FMEA. To do so, I click the FMEA Insight icon here in the decision diagram. The FMEA Insight dialog shows the details from our DFMEA. So for our failure mode, Flight Controller Short, we can see the cause for this failure mode is moisture, and the effect is noted as irregular motor speeds. We observe the severity is a 7, the occurrence is a 5, and likewise the detection is a 5, resulting in an RPN or risk priority number of 175. We see this value remains in our acceptable range shown with the green shading, however it is on the high side. So let's assume we'd like to implement some type of maintenance procedure to help mitigate this failure mode if possible. I'll click Close to return to the decision diagram. So next we must proceed through the questions in the decision diagram to evaluate the best options for maintenance to mitigate this failure mode. We can start by reviewing question 1. Will the loss of function caused by this failure mode on its own become evident to the operating crew under normal circumstances? We can start by entering a justification. I click No to complete the entry for this question and move on to the next question. The next is question 5. Is there an intolerable risk that the multiple failure could kill or injure someone? In this situation, because the failure is not apparent to the operator, this is considered a hidden failure. In many cases, hidden failures will have some type of protection added to the design in order to overcome the problem of the failure not being evident. In high-risk situations, a catastrophic failure could occur if a hidden failure occurs at the same time the protection device fails. The case where a failure and its protection fails is considered a multiple failure, the terminology used in this question. An example of a multiple failure would be if a smoke detector is in a failed state at the time a fire occurs. Based on the template we are using for this RCM analysis, the questions use the multiple failure terminology. As noted, however, you can opt to modify the decision diagram if you prefer to use different questions or change the question text. So as before, we enter the justification, and answer no to move to the next question. That takes us to question 6. Is there an intolerable risk that the multiple failure could breach a known environmental standard or regulation? Assume no justification is needed in this case, and click No to move to the next question. Next we have question 7. Does the multiple failure have a direct adverse effect on operational capability? I can once again enter the optional justification, and in this case I'll click Yes to move on to the next question. And that next question is question 18. Is a scheduled on-condition task technically feasible and worth doing? Note that on-condition tasks are tasks that are used to identify a potential failure mode before it occurs. They can often involve checking an item's condition either by hand or with the help of a diagnostic tool. For more detailed information about on-condition and other RCM task types, refer to our New to RCM blog post. The link is provided in the video description. In this case, diagnostic tests run by the operator at startup can be used to detect irregular flight controller speed and alert the operator of this condition. So as before, I enter the justification. And I click Yes. And in this case, it moves us to the end result of the decision diagram and on-condition task. Now that the decision diagram is complete, we move to the RCM worksheet to complete the information regarding the maintenance plan for the flight controller short failure mode. I click the RCM DFME worksheet tab to activate the RCM worksheet. The Save Changes dialog appears, prompting me to save my unsaved changes, the details that I added in the decision diagram. I'll click Save to go ahead and save that data and move to the RCM DFME worksheet. We can see the information gathered from the decision diagram entered into the worksheet for the flight controller short failure mode. For example, the recommended task is set to on condition. And then we can go ahead and enter information for a maintenance task. I start by selecting the task type. Next, I'll enter justification details. Then the task number, the task description, and finally the task interval. And having completed the data entry here on the RCM DFME worksheet for my first task, I can go ahead and click Save to save all of the data. This completes the sample RCM data entry in the decision diagram and on the worksheet. Note that we can enter additional data as needed in a similar fashion. This concludes this Getting Started with Relyence RCM tutorial. Thanks for watching. Please visit our website or contact us with any questions or to obtain pricing and purchasing information.